in classical conditioning. So we started our look at classical conditioning in Chapter 3, and now in Chapter 4 we're expanding on that idea to take a look at the various things that you can do with classical conditioning, the various phenomena that fall under this blanket term. Also what we're going to do today is we're going to start off with a look at what I'm going to be expecting for your upcoming SNFI assignments. So your SNFI assignments are going to be due, I believe it's midnight tomorrow. So the first three of them, they're very straightforward. They're basically a nice little way of introducing you to SNFI and helping you get used to working with SNFI. So if you haven't already, you need to get SNFI installed. And then again, we'll show you exactly what I'm looking for and also what you need to submit for this assignment. So we got 3 exercises to start off. In the syllabus, they're listed as exercise 1, 2, and 3. In your manual, depending upon the version of the manual that you have, if you have the light version, if you have the full version, they'll be numbered differently. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you're doing the correct SNFI exercise. So the title is correct. So don't look at the number, look at the title. So when you're doing that first exercise, look for basic acquisition of a conditioned response. It might be exercise 3, exercise 4 in your manual. It's the first homework assignment that we're going to be doing. But again, that's what you're looking for, that basic acquisition of a conditioned response. So in your manual, you'll see step-by-step instructions for how to set this up. So follow those. They'll take you through basically the entire setup for initiating a conditioned response. And some of the SNFI assignments will be more hands-on. Some of them will be a little bit more kind of like hands-off. This is one where you set up the conditions and you let the Skinner box that SNFI is in do the classical conditioning. So you'll need to set up the classical conditioning. So again, follow along in your manual. It'll tell you where to access, where to set up all the different sort of conditions. But importantly for your assignments, you're going to save your SNFI assignments, and you're going to save them, number 1, indicating which exercise they are. So definitely have SNFI exercise 1, SNFI exercise 2 somewhere, because you're going to be handing these in, and I've seen students get confused in terms of which file they upload to which assignment tab, and unfortunately I have to grade the file that's there. So make sure that you are very clear which one is for exercise 1, exercise 2. And then they have this SDF files, which are known as SNFI data files, and that's what you're going to save. So that is what you submit to Canvas for your assignment. Again, in the assignment tabs, you'll see exercise 1, exercise 2, exercise 3. So that's what you submit. I want that SDF file, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that file on my computer, and I will literally open up SNFI at the exact point where you saved your assignment. So I'll be able to see what was done, what you set up. So that's what you're handing in. You're handing in these SDF, these SNFI data files. So make sure that you know how to save those where you can find them. And again, name them in a way that is clear to you which assignments they are, because in some of these future exercises especially, you'll be doing like 5 assignments, for a homework group, and it's very easy to get those mixed up. So do yourself a favor, make sure that you come up with a naming convention that keeps it rather straightforward. All right, so that's in general. What are you going to be doing for this first one? So for this first assignment, you're going to be using classical conditioning to change a neutral stimulus into a conditioned stimulus that then causes a conditioned response. So to do that, you're going to, again, follow along in your manual, go to the experiment, design classical conditioning experiment. You click on that, and it'll bring you up this classical conditioning experimental design window. And in that window, you basically tell the SNFI program how many times do you want SNFI to be conditioned, how many trials do you go through, what's the intensity of, in this case, the tone, You're going to be using the tone as a neutral stimulus. You're going to be using the shock as an unconditioned stimulus. That's going to cause the unconditioned response of jumping when Sniffy receives that shock. You're going to do it for 10 trials. And again, all of this is going to be step by step in the manual that came with the Sniffy disc. So once you set that up, you can click on run. As I mentioned, this one's pretty straightforward, a little bit more hands-off than the other ones. You hit run and it will take Sniffy through those 10 classical conditioning trials where the tone is presented, the shock is presented, and then that over the 10 trials causes the tone to become a conditioned stimulus, which then causes the conditioned response. So when you're at this point, you're going to want to save it, and then that's what you submit. You submit your Sniffy data file when you get to this point, and these two windows are going to be what I'm going to be looking for. So let's expand those a little bit, and specifically that blue window is what I'm going to be looking for. So one of the benefits of working with a virtual rat is that you can actually peer into this virtual rat's mind and see how much the rat has learned, see how strong that conditioned response is. And that's what this graph over here is showing. So it's showing the strength of the conditioned stimulus to cause a conditioned response. And this is your evidence of learning. So for the tone, which is what used to be a neutral stimulus, it's actually showing you with that graph, it's increasing its strength as a conditioned stimulus, causing a larger conditioned response. So for assignment number 1, that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for that graph that shows that increased strength of that conditioned stimulus to cause that conditioned response. So this is, again, what I'm going to be looking for. Sniffy behaves as much as they can in terms of modeling a real rat with real instincts and behaviors. So first off, your data is not going to look exactly like my data. So this graph especially might look different. It'll in general be increasing. We'll talk about this graph next class. This one might look a little bit different, but again, it'll in general be increasing. But if you do run this assignment and you don't get that graph, that doesn't, you don't get that increased strength in the conditioned stimulus, you need to run it again in order to get full points. Because this is what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for this output here that shows that Sniffy has increased his conditioned response to this previously neutral stimulus that you have now changed into a conditioned stimulus. So that's assignment number 1. And again, save the Sniffy file, upload it. When I open it, it'll open at this point. I'll take a look at this. And if your graph looks like this, you get full points for this first Sniffy assignment. Sniffy assignment number 2 is extinction. And this is often the second stage to any sort of learning demonstration, is to literally just get rid of the learning that you just accomplished. So when you do this in real life and it takes you a long time to get this rat trained, this is almost excruciating to say, all right, we finally got this rat trained, let's untrain him. I mean, but it's just the kind of convention. So exercise number 2, extinction. Extinction, again, follow the instructions in your manual. You're going to present the conditioned stimulus now. You're going to present that tone with no shock. So you're going to go through another number of trials, but this time you're going to go back into that experimental window. You're going to turn the shock off, and you're basically going to continually present this tone without ever shocking Sniffy. And as you can see, that green arrow is where the extinction procedure begins. You can see that the strength of the conditioned response goes lower and lower and lower, so that conditioned stimulus is turning back into a neutral stimulus. But again, that special unlearned neutral stimulus. So notice that in order to do assignment 2, and again, this will be in your manual, you have to start with where you left off in assignment 1. So save assignment 1, and then continue on, save it as assignment 2, and then continue on, and then finally save that as assignment 3. So for assignment 2, that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for that decrease in the strength of the conditioned response, that changing of that conditioned stimulus back into a neutral stimulus. And you don't have to get it all the way back down to 0. They'll say to run it for, I think it's either 15 or 20 trials. But again, that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for that decrease. So once more, if you have this graph as part of your SDF file, and I open it up and I see this decrease, full points for exercise number 2, extinction. And then the last one that you'll be doing on this first round is the trickiest one. And by that, I don't mean it's as straightforward as the previous one, but you might have to do it more than once. So this is the one where you go through spontaneous recovery. So in the Sniffy experimental design menu, they have a button where you can literally put Sniffy in timeout. So you can literally put Sniffy, take him out of the box. It's like a virtual taking him out of the lab and then putting him back into the box, giving him a rest period, which is exactly what you need to create spontaneous recovery. So we just went through extinction. Sniffy's finally no longer responding with a conditioned response to that previously conditioned stimulus. Now we give him a break in order to create spontaneous recovery. And as you can see at that red arrow right there, this is where he comes back after the break. You sound the tone again. You do not pair it with a shock. You just sound the tone. And what you should see is you should see this recovery or this increase back of the conditioned stimulus. So you should see another indication of an increased conditioned response. Again, your curve might be higher or lower than this one, but you should definitely see that reversal, that increase. And that's what I'm going to be looking for. And what I typically notice for students is that this is the one that you probably have like a 70-30 chance of getting it on your first try. So if you put Sniffy into timeout and you put Sniffy back into the lab and Sniffy does not have or does not show spontaneous recovery, you don't get that bump, close out the program, don't save it, reopen exercise number 2 and try it again. Put him back in timeout and see if you can get that bump, because that bump, that spontaneous recovery is what I'm going to be looking for. So do it as many times as you need to, probably only twice. You know, most of you will get it on the first try, but if you don't get it on the first try, just reopen exercise number 2, give it another go, because again, I need to see this bump in order for you to get full points for that spontaneous recovery. And those are your first 3 Sniffy assignments. You will hand in 3 SDF files, again, to the appropriate Canvas assignments tab, and that'll be how you submit and complete those first 3 assignments. Any questions on that? What to do? What do I expect? Mm-hmm.
So when you open the file and you create, like for the third one, you said it didn't cause that bump. Like just don't save it. What if you already like saved it?
Oh, yeah. No, if you already saved it as your third file, what you'll need to do regardless is you need to go back to the second one where Sniffy was taking a break before you gave him timeout and just try it again. So, I mean, if you've already saved it, then you can either overwrite it or delete it, but definitely don't hand that one in. So when you're handing in your Sniffy files, make sure again that you get the effects. And again, Sniffy is made to model a real animal as much as possible. And anybody that has ever interacted with real animals knows that they don't follow the rules every single time. So I assume there's like a random generator in the program that kind of makes Sniffy's behavior very variable. And again, if you don't get the effect, try it again. Go back to the previous iteration, previous exercise, and just give it another go. All right. Any other questions? Yep.
Has there been any problems with Sniffy files or when they add the system, like you does it work for all of them?
I've never had a problem opening files, and I assume I've gotten Mac files. I think if you've already installed, has anybody installed it on their Mac? I know it works. It works. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'll be able to open up the SDF files. The one hiccup though is that if you have an older version of Sniffy, if you're using like version 2 or if you found an ancient version 1, Those ones, they're hit or miss. So if you do, if you do have an older version, you can give it a try, but I might not be able to open the files, in which case I can't grade the assignment. But if you're using Sniffy 3, which is the version that was listed in the bookstore, those always work, and I've never had issues before. All right, any final questions on the Sniffy assignment? So again, these ones, again, are your sort of intro to Sniffy. Won't take too long. So definitely take your time, look for those, make sure it looks like this. You can have this file open next to you in PowerPoint just to make sure that you know what you're looking for. And do it until you see this pattern of exercise 1, increasing conditioned response strength. Exercise 2, decreasing strength as Sniffy goes through extinction. And then exercise 3, spontaneous recovery as he comes out of a timeout situation. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to continue our look at phenomenon of classical conditioning. And specifically, we're going to apply this to help us understand advertising again. So we've taken a look at classical conditioning, applied it to advertising when we first saw it. Last class, we applied it to coulrophobia, the fear of clowns, as well as the design of horror movies and Disney villains. So today we're going to kind of keep that theme alive and take a look again at advertising and see what principles of classical conditioning can tell us about that, specifically about the bizarre phenomenon of the celebrity endorser. So many advertisements, so many companies pay millions of dollars to celebrities to endorse their products, and the reason that they do it is because it's effective, it works. So we're going to see today, why does it work? Why does Capital One pay so much money to Jennifer Garner and Samuel L. Jackson? Because when you think about it, there's very, very few people who are super hardcore Jennifer Garner fans and are going to sit there going, oh, is that the credit card she uses? I want to be just like her, so I'm going to get Capital One. Right? There's a minuscule amount of people that are like that, and yet it still works. So why does it work? So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to focus on one of the most heavily used celebrity endorsers of all time. So this is going back a little bit. Hopefully some of you will recognize the name. Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan is one of the top NBA players of all time. I think if you ask most people, he's lifetime top 3. You would probably put him probably number 1 or 2, depending upon who you ask. But here's an image of Michael Jordan from his rookie days on the right, all the way through his many years in the NBA. And he was absolutely the biggest sports celebrity in the world during his time in the NBA. So if you've ever bought a pair of Air Jordan shoes, or if you try to find a retro pair and you're spending $600 for Air Jordan 3s, is because Jordan was just such a huge phenomenon. Because of his, just to give you some context, because of him and his star power, the Chicago Bulls insignia became the 3rd most recognized brand behind like Coca-Cola and McDonald's worldwide, right? So this is, when you talk about guys who changed, the game, Michael Jordan was one of those guys. So Air Jordan, Nike came to him and said, we want you to endorse our shoes. And that makes sense when you think about it, because people might look at him and they might say, you know what? He can pick any shoe that he wants. So if he's picking Nike shoes, that's an indication that Nike's probably a quality brand, that they make a good shoe, because he's not going to use inferior products. So if he's using Nike shoes, maybe it's because Nike shoes, are just better shoes. So that might be a reason why Nike would hire him as a celebrity endorser. He also was on the box of many, many Wheaties boxes. Many Wheaties boxes. And it kind of makes sense for Wheaties to come to him as a celebrity endorser, because you might say to yourself, well, all right, Michael Jordan, he's got to stay athletic. He's got to stay healthy. Maybe he actually eats Wheaties. Maybe that's his choice for a healthy breakfast of champions. So it makes sense that Wheaties would call him up and say, hey, Michael, endorse our product. because people will see, that you eat it and you live this healthy lifestyle. So therefore they'll come to that conclusion. So sometimes the celebrity endorsement kind of makes straightforward sense, but it doesn't have to. So Hanes underwear had an endorsement deal with Michael Jordan. And this is where it starts to become a little bit of a stretch, because you can say, well, if you're going to dunk from the foul line, you got to have comfortable underwear, I guess, maybe. I don't know. So, Hanes endorsed him, paid for his celebrity to endorse their product. Ballpark Franks had an endorsement deal with Michael Jordan. And I guarantee you this was not part of his diet, right? Hot dogs are not the go-to meal for professional athletes. Coca-Cola had an endorsement deal with him. Basically, almost everybody had an endorsement deal with him. And even things that have nothing to do whatsoever with basketball. So Rayovac batteries had an endorsement deal with Michael Jordan. And it's impossible to sit there and going, well, maybe the batteries he uses to power his flashlight when he's the last person at practice. I don't know. Like, there's just no connection there. So it was endorsement after endorsement. It was in print. It was in commercials as well. So just to also give you an indication of how much technology has changed, here's a commercial for MCI's Friends and Family Plan, where you could call your family long distance on Sundays for only 5 cents a minute. So back in the day where you needed a savings plan to talk to your family if they didn't live right next to you in your state.
Tweety, I really don't think you guys realize. I do. MCI Bats and Sundays helps me keep up with my space jam buddies. He doesn't even have feathers. But we have the same last name. It's just 5 cents a minute, every Sunday. And get 10 cents a minute all week long. But just because he's Larry Bird and you're Tweety Bird doesn't mean you're related. I don't know. We look an awful lot alike. Call 1-800-Sunday to become an MCI customer.
All right, so again, he's a basketball player. Why would you listen to him in terms of your outdated, archaic, long-distance plan? So why do the celebrity endorsements work? We'll take a look at that. Again, the phenomenon underlying it is a classical conditioning phenomenon. And then we're also going to apply it to help understand another kind of bizarre choice that was made. And it has to do with trailers for movies, and specifically trailers for children movies. So a nice example of this bizarreness had to do with the trailer for Penguins of Madagascar. So this was a movie that came out, I think, like 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm going to play for you the trailer and pay close attention to the musical choices that are made in this trailer, because they make absolutely no sense whatsoever unless you understand the reason they're being used, and it has to do with classical conditioning.
When the world needs saving, it will take the most elite team on Earth. Skipper, Kowalski, Rico, and Private.
We're the elitist of the elite.
The creators of Madagascar.
Okay, boys, this is it. The mission we've been preparing for our entire lives.
Remain calm and ready to see. You are now under the protection of the North Wind.
Private, bibble me. We're not going anywhere with you. We don't even know who the heck you are.
The North Wind is an elite undercover interspecies. Task force dedicated to dedicated to helping animals help themselves.
Skipper, we've got to be 5 miles up. That pretty much limits our options. I make my own options. Brilliant move, Skipper. But now we seem to be outside the plan. I kind of got caught up in the moment. Well, hindsight's 20/20.
Oh, why don't we catch that plane?
That's right. LOGGINS.
penguins of Madagascar.
Now we're talking. Let's get to work. 400 meters. 300 meters. Fake American Kowalski. Sorry, sir. 218 yards. Okay, then. It's clear what we need to do next. Yeah, that feels right.
All right, so that was a trailer for the Penguins of Madagascar. Two very bizarre song choices were made in that trailer. We'll talk about them in just a moment and why they were so bizarre and then why they were used. And it all has to do with this complexities of classical conditioning. So we're going to take a look at extensions of classical conditioning, specifically higher order conditioning, and apply that to celebrity endorsements to understand why they're effective, and also to trailers for children movies to see why producers who make these trailers will choose very weird non-children songs for use in their trailers. All right, so once again, for the textbook example, back to Pavlov's dog. And once again, before conditioning, food is an unconditioned stimulus that causes salivation, which is the unconditioned response. As well, before conditioning, the bell is a neutral stimulus that causes no salivation, so that's it does not cause the targeted response. So it's a neutral stimulus, and then with the procedure of classical conditioning, you pair the bell with the food. So you ring the bell, that is followed by the food. The food causes salivation. So we have our bell, the neutral stimulus, being followed by food, the unconditioned stimulus, and the unconditioned stimulus causes the salivation, which is the unconditioned response. You do this over multiple trials, and eventually the learning occurs, which is that bell, the neutral stimulus, being changed into a conditioned stimulus. And we know that it's a conditioned stimulus. We know that this change has occurred because when we show the bell on its own, it will now cause salivation. It will now cause the conditioned response. So that's the basic classical conditioning procedure. But once you have this bell as a conditioned stimulus, once you have this conditioned stimulus that causes the conditioned response, you can then use what is known as higher order conditioning. And basically, this is kind of like the next level of conditioning, where you can use that conditioned stimulus to further condition a new neutral stimulus. So the bell becomes the conditioned stimulus 1. And this conditioned stimulus, as we've just seen, has been created by pairing it with food. And this conditioned stimulus is now causing the conditioned response. We can now use this in a new round of classical conditioning. So let's say that we had a new stimulus, a new neutral stimulus, which was a light. And this light, if you turned on the light, the dog did not salivate whatsoever. So this light is a neutral stimulus number 2, and it causes no salivation. What we can do is we can pair that light with the conditioned stimulus. So we present the light, and after the light, we ring the bell. And the bell is a conditioned stimulus that causes that conditioned response. And we can do this over a number of different trials, and eventually that neutral stimulus, the light neutral stimulus, will turn into a secondary higher order conditioned stimulus. And that light will now on its own, we know that this learning has occurred because the light on its own will cause salivation. So this new higher order conditioned stimulus now causes the conditioned response of salivation. So very interestingly, this light has turned into a conditioned stimulus from a neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus without ever being paired with food. So it was never paired with the unconditioned stimulus, but by pairing it with this bell, which we changed into a conditioned stimulus, through this process of higher order conditioning, we can change that light from a neutral stimulus into a conditioned stimulus, which now on its own, we know it's a conditioned stimulus because it will now cause the conditioned response of salivation. All right, so any questions about the basic higher order procedure? So at its core, the higher order procedure takes a conditioned stimulus and substitutes it for the unconditioned stimulus in the basic classical conditioning paradigm. So this is what we're going to do, or this is what we're going to use. This idea is what we're going to use to understand first the idea of the celebrity endorser. So the reason, the bottom line reason as to why Michael Jordan made so much money getting paid as a celebrity endorser was because it worked. It was effective, right? So when people saw this advertisement, sales for rayovac batteries went up. But what is it about Michael Jordan and his skill on the basketball court that is going to be useful for rayovac in order to have people motivated to buy their product? Well, if you remember, does anybody remember what is the basic reason that people make purchasing decisions? It's an emotional response. So any advertiser, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make you feel good about their product. They're trying to change their product from a neutral stimulus that causes nothing into a conditioned stimulus that causes positive emotion, because that's what's going to cause you to choose rayovac batteries when you're in front of that wall of batteries and you have all those different choices. You're going to see the rayovac battery, and if the advertisement's effective, it's going to cause you to feel positive emotions and say, you know what, for some reason, I don't know why, I'm going to try rayovac this time. I just have a good feeling. So that's what they're going for. So they have to start off with some unconditioned stimulus that causes positive emotions. And one of those unconditioned stimulus that causes positive emotions, we saw last time, fun was one of the unconditioned stimulus that causes the unconditioned response of positive emotions. Usually when people see people having fun, they feel positive emotions about it. Another one that seems to work broadly is success. In general, unless you really dislike somebody, when you see somebody being successful, you experience positive emotions, right? So just to take it back to an example that I think everybody can identify with, if you've ever seen a baby walk for the first time, right? If you've ever seen them kind of like, oh, and then they're up, and then they take that one step, and then they take that second step, and then they fall on their butt. But they've had success, right? They've just walked. It's very few people that will look at that and go, oh, so depressed now. Like, I hate, oh, that just ruined my day. No, you're like, oh my gosh, like, wow, look at that. Positive emotions, right? So success leads to or causes positive emotions. So if you see success, that causes you to experience positive emotions. So where does Michael Jordan fit into all this? Well, when Michael Jordan started his career, right, the first time you see Michael Jordan is a neutral stimulus. So Michael Jordan is a neutral stimulus that causes no emotions. So if you had no idea who Michael Jordan was, many of you probably today had no idea who Michael Jordan was, the first time you saw one of his photos, you were kind of like, all right, he's a guy. I don't like him. I don't hate him. I'm kind of neutral, right? I have no emotions for him. So what happens? Well, during his NBA career, because he was such a skilled player, Michael Jordan, that neutral stimulus, was paired with success, and that success led to positive emotions. So over and over and over again, the neutral stimulus of Michael Jordan was shown. That was followed by success, and that led to positive emotions. So what are we talking about in terms of the success that followed Michael Jordan? Let's take a look at some of his plays. Clicked on the wrong thing. All right. There's Michael Jordan. There's success. All right. So him dunking on that other player, you have the neutral stimulus, and you have success, positive emotions. Right? Get rid of some of this volume here. Number 9. Oh, that's a good one. All right, we got Scottie Pippen, failure. Michael Jordan, success. Right? So, I mean, you watch that, and again, you have, here's Michael Jordan, the image of Michael Jordan, and here's this spectacular, successful dunk. You feel positive emotions. And you can hear the crowd cheering, right? When he does these plays, positive emotions all around the board. So again, it's this idea that during his playing career, over and over and over again, you would see Michael Jordan, number 23, paired with success because he was a massively successful player, and that would lead you to have positive emotions. All right, we're not going to watch all 7. Sorry, we're not going to watch all 10. I'll give him one more time. He wasn't even a selfish player. Oh my goodness, you couldn't even stop him. All right, so anyways, over and over this occurred. So the first time you see Michael Jordan, you're like, all right, you know, he's a guy, neutral emotions. But then you see him repeatedly dunking on people. You see him repeatedly scoring tons of baskets. You see him repeatedly winning championships. You see him repeatedly engaged in success. And eventually, Michael Jordan turns into that conditioned stimulus through classical conditioning, where now Michael Jordan elicits positive emotions. And you can always see this happening, for example, with sports stars. When you ask somebody, who's your favorite player? And their face lights up and they're like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan, like he's my man. Like, ooh, did you see us win that championship? Right? Like, so all of a sudden you start identifying with them as well. But, they have positive emotions toward these people. They have positive emotions towards LeBron James, positive emotions towards, Serena Williams because of all this success that they are attributed with. And that leads, again, to this idea of the positive emotion. So now we have Michael Jordan, who by himself, after all the dunks and all the championships, now causes positive emotions. He's become a conditioned stimulus that leads to that conditioned response of positive emotions. So far, so good. So what does an advertiser do next? Well, the advertiser says, all right, let's go through some higher order conditioning. So we have this star, Michael Jordan. Conditioned stimulus number 1 causes the conditioned response of positive emotions. And we here at Rayovac have our batteries, and our batteries are a neutral stimulus. We show people our batteries, and they're like, I never heard of Rayovac. I don't have positive emotions. I don't got negative emotions. Who is Rayovac? It's a neutral stimulus. But they can take that neutral stimulus, which causes no emotions, and now's where the celebrity endorsement comes in. Now is where they're going to pair their product, that neutral stimulus, with a conditioned stimulus of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, the conditioned stimulus, causes a conditioned response. And in the advertising campaign, you have commercials, you have advertisements. You're going to see this multiple times. And every single time you see it, it's another classical conditioning trial. And then eventually that product is going to change from a neutral stimulus through higher order conditioning into a conditioned stimulus, a secondary conditioned stimulus. And now that product on its own is going to cause the conditioned response of positive emotions. So now when you walk into the supermarket or into Home Depot and you're saying, or Walmart, and you're like, man, I need to pick up some batteries. And again, you scan that battery aisle, you're going to be looking and you're going to say, Duracell, Energizer, maybe. Rayovac, Rayovac. Got good feelings about Rayovac. Let me give it a shot. So you're definitely not sitting there, most people aren't sitting there going, well, Michael Jordan uses Rayovac and I want to be just like him, so I'm going to use it. No, but you have that positive emotion that is being caused now by the Rayovac packaging. And again, it's because it's been paired with Michael Jordan so often. All right, so is that instance of higher order conditioning make sense? All right, so you might have noticed that Michael Jordan had tons of endorsements. He made millions off of endorsements, but he doesn't make millions off of endorsements anymore. So he retired, he doesn't play basketball anymore. And why is that? what happens in terms of his ability to be a conditioned stimulus? What happens to that when he's no longer playing basketball? I'll give you a hint. In this product, conditioned stimulus followed by Michael Jordan, the conditioned stimulus, which leads to the positive emotion of a conditioned response. What stimulus is missing that is typically present in classical conditioning? So in your textbook, regular form of classical conditioning, which stimulus is missing?
The unconditioned stimulus.
The unconditioned stimulus. So there's no unconditioned stimulus. So in these advertisements, Michael Jordan is being presented as a conditioned stimulus, but he's not being paired with an unconditioned stimulus. So what do we call the procedure when you see a conditioned stimulus and it's not paired with the unconditioned stimulus? So you present the conditioned stimulus, there's a conditioned response. You then present the conditioned stimulus again, there's another conditioned response. And you keep presenting the conditioned stimulus over and over again with no unconditioned stimulus. Does anybody remember what that's called? Extinction. So what happens with these endorsements? Every single time you see this face, and you don't see him dunking on people, and you don't see him being successful, you don't see him paired with that unconditioned stimulus, his power as a conditioned stimulus decreases because he's literally going through extinction. So this is why after celebrities or after sports athletes retire, their endorsements go down because they're literally going through extinction every single time they're in an advertisement and you don't pair them with success. They're going through extinction where their conditioned stimulus is going down and down and down. Now, when he was playing, that's fine, because every time you saw this, his power as a conditioned stimulus would decrease, decrease, decrease. But when he totally owned the Lakers on Sunday, his power as a conditioned stimulus would increase because he'd score his 40 points and he'd dunk on everybody and he would make, players look foolish. So he would go back up in terms of his power as a conditioned stimulus, and then the advertisements would bring it back down, but then that other game would bring it back up. So while he was playing, he kind of reconditioned his status as a conditioned stimulus every single time he played a game. And then, and that's why he was powerful as a celebrity endorser. He was a powerful conditioned stimulus. Once he retired, those games were gone. Those re-ups for his power as a conditioned stimulus were gone. And that's why the number of endorsements decreased, because he's no longer this powerful conditioned stimulus. Incidentally, this is also why companies will drop a celebrity as soon as that celebrity does not invoke positive emotions any longer. So the classic case of that in recent memory was Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods had so much success on the PGA Tour. Tiger Woods had so much power as a conditioned stimulus to cause the positive emotions. But as soon as he was caught in his affair, as soon as does everybody remember the fall of Tiger Woods? Yeah, as soon as Tiger Woods was no longer eliciting positive emotions because details about his marital life came out and how he was cheating on his wife, as soon as those positive emotions were gone, advertisers dropped him so quickly. And it's not because they have family values. It's not because they're, a company that believes in certain, moral and ethical principles. It's because he went from a conditioned stimulus that causes positive emotions to a conditioned stimulus that causes negative emotions. And that's just not going to work for any advertisers. So, they don't want to say that. They don't want to say, oh, we're dropping him because he's no longer effective. But again, a lot of these companies will be like, oh, there's, we got family values, we have these morals. No, it's that whatever happened to that celebrity, as soon as they no longer elicit positive emotions, they're no longer beneficial in this higher order condition. All right, so any questions about that, the celebrity endorser? All right. So the next thing we're going to take a look at was the use of higher order conditioning in the curious case of the penguins of Madagascar. So does anybody recognize the two songs, the two kind of mainstream top of the chart songs that were in that trailer?
LOGGINS Danger Zone.
Yeah, Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone. And the other one? So the other song was the one that was the most confusing. And it was by a band, No One Ever Really Dies. And there's Pharrell, back when he wasn't so happy. And the name of this song, it came out, when was this released? 2001, right? The name of this song, and again, it's in a children's trailer for a children's film. And the name of this song was Lap Dance. And the lyrics of this song, I'll bust you off a piece of it so that you know. So, does anybody know this song? No? All right, check it out on iTunes. Here's a little taste. So one of the lyrics starts off, I'm an outlaw. And you take a look at it and you say, all right, well, that's kind of appropriate for the Penguins. They're outlaws. They're, this elite team. So, yeah, all right, that makes sense so far. Quick on the draw. And you're like, oh, yeah, they've got skills. They've got martial arts skills and they're very, adept and competent. Makes sense so far. Something you've never seen before. I've never seen an elite fighting squad of penguins or an interspecies, secret organization. So far, so good. And I dare mother effer to come in my face. And it's like, whoa, what is going on here? So that's the beginning of the song. Later on, you got the female voice comes in, ooh, baby, you want me? Well, you can get this lap dance here for free. And then another guy comes back in and he goes, chicks nickname me pilot, they get high off my D. I take them to my home, they call it the cockpit. Time for takeoff, the pennies they drop quick. Now that's first class effing, ain't that some fly S? In a children's movie, all right? So when I heard that, the first time I saw this trailer and I heard that, I was like, what is going on here? So why did they choose that song? Why was it effective? Why was it an effective choice in this song? And then also the other one that was identified, Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone, song from the 80s. I guarantee you is probably, does anybody have this in their playlist? We got one. All right, not very popular in anybody's playlist. Imagine if you're a child that was, about 5 years ago in the correct age for the Penguins. Definitely not going to be in your playlist. So why did they choose Lap Dance by n.e.r.d. and Kenny Loggins' The Danger Zone for the Penguins of Madagascar? So again, it has to do with higher order conditioning. And the key to understanding this is the release dates of these songs. So Danger Zone came out in 1986. Lap Dance came out in 2001. So does anybody have any speculation about why these two were included in the trailer for this movie? Mm-hmm.
Get the parents to feel.
These two songs were included in the trailers to evoke positive emotions in either the parents of the children who are the target audience for Penguins of Madagascar, or possibly the grandparents of the children who are the target audience, because somebody has to take these children to the movie. And it's either going to be the parents or it's going to be the grandparents. And this was used because of the phenomenon of higher order conditioning. So let's break it down and we'll take a look at how this trailer basically conditions everybody to have positive emotions to go see this Penguins of Madagascar movie. So we'll start off with the most straightforward example. We'll start off with the kids. So the children are watching this trailer, and once again, this trailer uses fun as the unconditioned stimulus, which causes the unconditioned response of positive emotions. So time after time, you see the penguins having fun, having a good time, doing jokes, eating Cheetos. I remember my daughter absolutely loved that scene, and she would have me reenact Secret Agents, or no, Agent Classified was the wolf. She would have me reenact the North Wind, and she'd take a Cheetos and be like about as loud as she could. She loved it. Positive emotions because of fun. Let's say that the children have no idea who the penguins are, right? They missed out on the first Madagascar movies, so there's no emotions when they just see these penguins. They're like, all right, they're okay, I guess. Neutral stimulus for the penguins. What this trailer does is it pairs the penguins with them having fun over and over and over again. The neutral stimulus of the penguins, them eating the Cheetos. The neutral stimulus of the penguins, high fives and shenanigans. The neutral stimulus of the penguins, jumping up and down in a bouncy house. All of those things are fun, and that fun causes the unconditioned response of positive emotions. So the penguins, the neutral stimulus, followed by fun, the unconditioned stimulus, causes the positive emotion, which is the unconditioned response. And after viewing that trailer over and over and over again, those penguins change from a neutral stimulus into a conditioned stimulus, which now can cause the conditioned response of positive emotions. So when movie night comes and these children go online and they're looking at the list of movies that are out there, and they see that penguins poster, they're going to have positive emotions towards those penguins, and they're going to say, ooh, that's the one I want to see. That's the movie I want to go to. Can we go to Penguins of Madagascar? And again, it's because penguins have gone from being a neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus, and now on its own, it can cause that conditioned response. All right, so that trailer now has the kids wanting to go to the theater. You cannot send your 6 and 7 year old children and say, call an Uber and go to the theater, here's $20, see you in 2 hours. You can't do that. Somebody has to take them. So the other part of the trailer has to do with the parents. And for the parents, you cannot necessarily use the same unconditioned stimulus that you used for the children, because for the parents, because of their position in life and because of their kind of cognitive development, a lot of the things that are seen as fun for children will not be fun unconditioned stimuli for the parents. So I can imagine a parent watching that clip, and whereas my daughter thought it was hilarious when Skipper was like, we don't even know who you are, and it's like, oh, the North Wind. The North Wind is an elite. It's an elite fighting. Child might think that's incredibly fun. An adult might look at that and go, what a rude penguin. I cannot believe that penguin would do that to that poor wolf. Why ask a question and then interrupt them every single time? These penguins are, you can imagine, not fun, right? Jumping out of planes, endangerment, not necessarily fun. So the fun aspects are not going to work necessarily on these parents. That's where the music comes in. Because if you were these individuals back in 1985, right? If you were in your early 20s back in 1985, that was approximately 30 years before the Penguins movie came out. You would be 50-ish when Penguins came out, aka grandparents' age. So what they did is they used the fun for, in this case, the grandparents. They needed something that was fun, that was an unconditioned stimulus that led to positive emotions, the unconditioned response. Back in 1985, when Kenny Loggins' song was released, let's forget that it's even a catchy tune, right? Let's forget that it's even just like a fun, upbeat song. Let's say that it was a neutral stimulus. Somebody hears that song and they're like, okay, it's a song, sure, whatever. It's a neutral stimulus. However, when you went to parties, when you went to beach barbecues, when you went to all those experiences that you can have when you're younger, pre-children, you heard that song. It was everywhere. It was a big hit. So that song, Danger Zone, got paired with fun experiences. That day at the carnival, that sleepover at your friend's house. It got paired with fun experiences. Those fun experiences causes the unconditioned response of positive emotions. And eventually, danger zone turns into a conditioned stimulus that, again, it changes from that neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus and leads to the positive emotion on its own. So eventually, danger zone, through conditioning, becomes a conditioned stimulus that causes the conditioned response of positive emotions. Incidentally, this is probably one of the big reasons why a lot of older people will listen to today's music and say, today's music sucks, right? They'll be like, today's music sucks. Back in my day, our music was great, and it was, so much better than today's music. It's not. Today's music is just as good as music before. What's missing is the fun, right? People listening today to today's music, if you're old enough and you're stuck at home and your children are screaming and you're trying to listen to the latest song, you're not pairing that with fun, right? It's not like back in the days when you were going to the concerts, when you were going, to the parties and stuff. So all of that conditioning does not occur unless you have that fun experience. So this is probably why nostalgia works so much, because again, it's kind of like those the times in your life when you had the most fun. All right, I'm digressing. Off we go. Danger zone, conditioned stimulus leads to positive emotions. Then you can do the higher order conditioning. Because if you were those 20-somethings in 1985, those penguins now, when you're watching that trailer, they're a neutral stimulus that leads to no emotions. However, once you hear that song, Danger Zone, that Danger Zone song is a conditioned stimulus that causes the conditioned response. So if it's paired with penguins of Madagascar, it can, through higher order conditioning, change that penguin stimulus into a conditioned stimulus through higher order conditioning, where now the penguins on their own will cause the conditioned response of a positive emotion. So again, by pairing a neutral stimulus with a previously conditioned stimulus, in this case the song Danger Zone, grandparents that see that trailer will change the penguins for them from a neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus, so that when their grandchildren say, oh, Grandpa, Grandma, look at this movie. Can we see it? Can we see it? They'll take a look at the poster and go, oh, that Penguins movie? Yeah, sure. I got good feelings about that movie. Let's go. We'll take you to the theater. So that's why Danger Zone was in there, to appeal to the 20-somethings back in 1985. And then No One Ever Really Dies was in there because if you missed the 80s, but this was you in 2003 watching this band at Coachella, it's 10 years later, and if you're a 20-something, 10 years later, you're a 30-something, chances are you're going to have a child that might want to go see Penguins of Madagascar. So the No One Ever Really Dies lap dance, horrible choice in terms of making sense. However, huge hit at the time. And if you, again, are a parenting age when Penguins came out, this was probably you in the early 2000s. So the mystery of those two choices, again, Kenny Loggins for the grandparents, No One Ever Really Dies for the parents, and then everybody has positive emotions towards those penguins, which become a conditioned stimulus. All right, so we'll end it with just a few more examples to kind of drive this point home. So did anybody recognize the voice of the wolf in the Penguins movie? It's Benedict Cumberbatch. So Benedict Cumberbatch was the voice of the wolf, and logically, there is no reason to cast Benedict Cumberbatch. And if you went around and asked, this is pre-Doctor Strange, if you went around and asked a 6 to 8-year-old child, who is Benedict Cumberbatch, they would probably ask you, what is a Benedict Cumberbatch? Like, that makes no sense to me. And it's even worse when you consider that he was in a Penguins movie and he narrated a Penguins documentary, and he can't say the word penguins.
Is penguins, crested penguins, paired penguin heading home. So why are these woodlands so attractive to penguins?
He can't say penguins, right? So why cast him in a movie? Why pay him top dollar to not even appear on screen, but to just voice a movie where he struggles to say the word penguin. Well, the reason, again, was because he was at that point a star. He starred in Sherlock, so his celebrity was on the rise, and he is divisive. I've asked a lot of people if they find Benedict Cumberbatch attractive or not, and there's nobody that has middle ground. They're either like, yes, he's dreamy, or no, he's absolutely not. But at that time, and still today, sex symbol, attractive, not to 6 or 8 year olds, but definitely to the parents. So when the parents heard that Benedict Cumberbatch voice, once again, it was paired with things that they've enjoyed, either Sherlock or his Instagram account. And once again, it caused that secondary conditioning where the penguins went from a neutral stimulus to a conditioned stimulus. I'm going to have to do a study one time on divisively attractive people, because literally I asked the class one time, and I had half of the class being like, "Oh yeah, he's totally dreamy," and I had the other half going, "Ew." So yeah, it's bizarre. All right, one last example, and this is just to kind of show you the power of classical conditioning. Learning a lot of times is not rational. It's not something that makes sense. So we've seen that. Lap dance makes no sense. However, it's effective. And I think one of the best examples of that was, again, we'll go back to Michael Jordan. And he did a series of commercials with Spike Lee. And in these commercials, I'll show you one of them, they made a point of telling people that Michael Jordan's success on the basketball court had nothing to do with the Nike shoes that he was wearing, which seems to be completely counterintuitive for a commercial. So I'll give you an example of one of those. Whoops. Click on that.
Yo, Mars Blackman here with my main man, Michael Jordan. Yo, Mike, what makes you the best player in the universe? Is it the vicious stunts?
No, Mars.
Is it the haircut?
No, Mars.
Is it the shoes?
No, Mars.
Is it the extra long shorts?
No, Mars.
It's the shoe fit, right?
Nah.
Mars Blackman here with my main man, Mike.
All right, so notice that they're literally telling these people, hey, here's Michael Jordan, here's this amazing athlete. Has nothing to do with the shoes, right? What kind of an advertisement would do that? An effective one. Because again, what they've done here is they're using Michael Jordan's celebrity for higher order conditioning. And notice that even though they're telling our conscious mind that it's got nothing to do with the shoes, nothing to do with the shoes, nothing to do with the shoes, pay attention how often they use the conditioned stimulus of Michael Jordan and they pair it with the shoes. So just take a look at how often, again.
Jordan, yo, Mike, what makes you the best player in the universe? Is it the vicious stunts?
No, Mars.
Is it the haircut?
No, Mars.
Is it the shoes?
So we have Jordan shoes.
Is it the extra long shorts?
No, Mars.
Jordan
Is it the shoe fit,
shoes.
right?
Nah.
Is it the short socks?
Jordan shoes.
Money's gotta be the
Shoes.
shoes. Shoes. You sure it's not the shoes?
No.
What about the shoes?
No, Mars.
Money's gotta be the shoes.
All right, so you literally have Michael Jordan saying it's not the shoes. Buy my shoes, they're not going to help. You're not going to be dunking on anybody because it's not the shoes. And yet it was effective because through that whole time, you saw Michael Jordan, conditioned stimulus, you saw the shoes, neutral stimulus. Here's the shoes, here's Michael Jordan. Here's the shoes, here's Michael Jordan. And eventually you're going to be walking in that shoe store and you're going to be saying to yourself, I need some basketball shoes to sit around and play video games in. What am I going to choose? I don't know. I got a good feeling about these Air Jordans here. Let me make that purchase. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover for today. Any questions on anything before we adjourn? All righty. So I will see you all next class. We have another pretest coming up. We have to push